Hello, everybody. My name is Matt Orfanello. Welcome back to the End Step. I'm here with Eric Dupuis.
Oh, it's awesome to be back. We had 4 rounds of vintage, and it's very exciting to see the changes from M14.
All right, so right now we're looking at round one. We have Borg Golton playing Bug and Barry Everson playing Dredge.
We've been seeing a lot of bug lately. Abrupt Decay is a good answer towards some of the most omnipresent cards in the format, like Time Vault, Dark Confidant, and it does happen to answer the new threat, Young Pyromancer.
Also, with the main deck Graveyard Hate in form of Scavenging Ooze and Deathrite Shaman, it gives you a better game versus the field.
It also helps in this matchup, which happens to be Dredge. Barry Everson's one of the better Dredge pilots that I've seen. He's played it in every format where it's been legal. He's got a lot of experience, and he knows how to change gears from full-blown combo to just beating you down with the utility creatures.
Yeah, so in Barry's list, it looks like he's playing main deck Unmasked. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, Barry's definitely making that call because of the added gains versus the combo decks and the ability to punch through his Dread Return versus control. A lot of the Dredge players lately have been afraid to run the Dread Returns main deck or at all because they just feel like it's going to get countered. Looks like he's out of the gate already using Bazaar, discarding some cards, a Serum Powder being the top one, and we'll see what he's able to do with these. Dredging back a Golgari Thug. Hitting 2 Grave Trolls. This is looking good. And those main deck Leyline of the Void. Second Dredge is the Grave Troll. He's setting them aside. He's got the 6, and are they good? Whoa, there's 2 Narcos right off the bat.
Wow, and it looks like they're foiled too. Very nice. So Borg has a Black Lotus and Polluted Delta in play, representing Mana Drain, Spell Pierce. Looking at his list, he's not actually playing Mana Drain, but Barry doesn't know that. He is playing Spell Pierce, Flusterstorm, Force of Will, and Mental Misstep.
As Barry dredges the Grave Troll for his draw step, I've got to wonder what was in Borg's hand in order to make him keep that and not use any of that mana on his first turn. That is a little unusual.
Right.
It looks like he's got some lands we can actually see from the camera. So he's not going to have any mana problems this game, but Barry's bringing his problems for him.
Especially with his landfall triggers in form of Bloodghast.
Yeah, at any point if a Dread Return hits the bin, we could see some very explosive plays from Barry.
Now, one thing I noticed, in Legacy, they play Lion's Eye Diamond in the Dredge lists, but I don't notice Lion's Eye Diamond in Barry's list.
It's pretty uncommon. It's a very all-in play, and what Bazaar Baghdad lets you do is play around the Graveyard Hate. Instead of just losing to a Tormod's Crypt, most vintage Dredge players, when they have enough experience, look at a card like Tormod's Crypt as a speed bump. They force you to crack it, maybe get rid of a Icarid, maybe break up a Bridge from Below trigger, but it's not going to completely ruin their day like it would if they were on the Lion's Eye Diamond build.
And they play the main deck Leyline of the Void. I've noticed that, and that's not a thing you see in Legacy, really.
You'd see a lot more of it if Tendrils was more popular in Legacy, but the reality is there aren't that many decks that can race Dredge in Legacy. It's pretty much a combo deck. In Vintage, however, even the control decks can potentially assemble something like Vault Key, usually with the help of their Graveyard and a Yawgmoth's Will. So if they can slow down the opposing decks, even by a turn, that could be enough to let them get there. Now his build has the Flamekin Zealot as the Dread Return target, trying to create an army of hasty zombie tokens and just end the game in a flash. He's got some Cabal therapies going in, another Bloodghast.
I noticed that he dredged into double Bridge from Below and double Icarid.
Yeah, this game is going very badly for Borg. Without having any kind of answer to that huge graveyard on board, that's almost the entire deck. We've got Icarids.
Wow, it looks like his entire deck's foil. That's pretty nice.
Dredge is nice when you're able to foil it out. The only problem is there are no foil Bazaars.
Not yet.
Yeah, this is looking very bad for Borg. Now, a card like Deathrite Shaman or Scavenging Ooze, thank you. He can do a lot to mitigate the damage early, but at this point in time, even with Lotus, removing 3 cards from this graveyard is just not going to make a difference.
Seems a little too late. Seems like it would have had to happen on turn 1 for Borg so that he could interact with the first cards that would be available for dredging.
Absolutely. If you can stop them from dredging, or if he was able to get rid of those Narcomoebas before they entered the battlefield with the trigger on the stack, that could have made a huge difference. But as it is here, I mean, this is...
Even without any zombie tokens, he's already representing, what is that, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 power on the board that can attack this turn.
And we're going to see a Cabal Therapy here to clear the way.
Mental Mist. Oh, Flusterstorm.
Yeah, Dredge is pretty much never able to pay the 2 mana for a Spell Pierce or a Flusterstorm.
That's true in both Vintage and Legacy.
So it looks like he has all 4 bridges in there, getting 4 tokens and another therapy. I mean, this is... It almost would have been better to scoop and not let him know what your counter options are. That's another thing with the Unmask, is right now there are a ton of different counters seeing play. In previous eras, you might go in thinking it's just going to be Force or Mana Drain. But now the quality of cards like Spell Pierce, Flusterstorm, and then Snapcaster interacting with those, you really can't know exactly how your opponent might be stopping you. Now, Barry does have Mental Misstep in his list, which is... It's an interesting choice. It's especially good game 2 because most of the cards that are going to be the backbreakers are going to cost 1. We're talking about Grafdigger's Cage, Nile's Spellbomb, Surgical Extraction. There are so many that cost 1 mana, and a lot of the time they'll be protecting their cards with cards like Mental Misstep, Flusterstorm, well, not Flusterstorm, but certainly Spell Pierce. And Misstep can help you punch through your removal for their answers if you have Nature's Claim or Chain of Vapor.
Oh, so he Spell Pierced. Were there 2 counter spells? Because he showed him 2 Mental Missteps.
I think that was on the Flusterstorm. I think he actually hit both copies.
So Borg just has a handful of lands.
Yeah, this is very, very bad.
Very over.
Yeah, Bug doesn't have the over-the-top play. There's no Assembling Vault Key or... I mean, even Tinker Blightsteel would do almost nothing here.
Yep, scooping it up. So, in Barry's sideboard, he has 2 Dark Blast, 2 Firestorm, 2 Nature's Claim, 3 Ingot Chewer, 1 Elesh Norn, 3 Chain of Vapor, 1 Iona, and 1 Surgical. I think that he's probably going to want to bring in Firestorm. I mean, he doesn't necessarily know that yet because he didn't see any of the creatures. But once he knows about Deathrite Shaman and Scavenging Ooze, he's going to want to bring those in.
Yeah, Firestorm is very good at removing them. Dark Blast could be very good for a card like Gixlid Jailer, which you have to expect out of a deck that's black, blue, green. What's really nice about the Bug deck is it has access to most of the really good disruption. You can actually cast your Leyline of the Void if you draw it. And you also, as mentioned, you have the Scavenging Oozes and the Deathrite's main, and then you can bring in more with Jailer, Nile Spellbomb, so you're drawing a card off of your Tormod's Crypt style activation. So there's a lot of quality hate that you have to prepare for, so you need to make sure you don't get blown out by it.
Grafdigger's Cage seems like a really good sideboard option too, as it prevents your opponent from tinkering or activating Oath of Druids, and it shuts off any activations from Dredge. They're still allowed to Dredge, but nothing can enter the battlefield from the graveyard.
Yeah, that's a very likely suspect too from a Bug deck, because they don't have their own Tinker. It isn't symmetrical like the other control decks. They don't even run Yawgmoth's Will.
So Borg's probably going to take out his 4 Abrupt Decays.
Yeah, those do very little here.
What else comes out?
I'd imagine Vendilion Click doesn't make the cut. At 3 mana just for a 3/1 body,
Right.
I mean, it really doesn't do very much. It's very different than the previous builds we've seen Borg run. His previous builds had a lot of Exalted triggers, so a 3/1 in that build that could easily be punching in for 5, 6, 7 damage in the air, which could be exactly what you're looking for. But here I'd say it's probably not worth the mana. I wouldn't want to be walking away from, say, a Spell Pierce just to get a 3/1.
Now he does have 3 wastelands and a strip mine, so he's ready to deal with that mulligan down to Bazaar plan.
Yeah, the difficult thing with the bug deck is it can still lose to the slow dredging. It's not like they're able to just explode, so unless he has something to interact with the graveyard as well as a way of getting rid of the Bazaar, he could still find himself in a bad spot.
True. Yeah, so I mean, I'd like to take a moment to just thank Dave and Scholars for hosting this tournament. I mean, it's really been very impressive for me, just seeing Vintage sort of come back, and Sanctioned Vintage happening on a monthly basis. It's really great to see here in New England.
I love seeing it grow. This was our most successful one yet. I think there was probably half a dozen people who really wanted to make it who couldn't, and I mean, we could have easily been in the 20s. I think we're probably, because of the success of these, we're now looking into doing a Saturday event, and stay tuned for that. That could be really good. There's a lot of people from outside of Massachusetts who'd like to make it down on a Monday, but it's just too difficult, and I'd like to get those people involved too. So let's see how deep he needs to mulligan to find that Bazaar. Looking over his deck list, I'm reminded of a deck I built for a friend a while back with Dredge. He was brand new to the format, and he had a really hard time with Cabal Therapy, so we ran the full boat of Unmasks, and it completely changed his outlook. I mean, he was able to figure out, oh, I see Ancestral. Let me cut my anecdote short. This looks like a spicy hand from Borg. I see Vamp and Ancestral. This could be good. If he draws into the graveyard hate, he's going to be in an awesome space, and if not, he can always vamp for it. So this is the type of hand that he's looking for.
Barry's on at least his first mulligan.
Yeah, the Emerald is really going to help. The bug decks are so much better when they have acceleration.
Right, but they don't play the full suite of Moxen because the off colors are just so irrelevant.
Oh, I agree, absolutely. I would not advocate running the off-color Moxen. Deathrite Shaman does a ton of work. As long as you're accelerating your plan, you just don't want to be stuck in a situation where you're playing a fair game plan of turn 1 land, turn 2 tap out for a Dark Confidant. That's really slow for Vintage. And unless your
Seems like a legacy deck.
It is, absolutely. The difference being that you can flip some better cards with Dark Confidant in the form of Ancestral and Vamp and all of those goodies. But here we go, turn 1 land, Emerald. And where do we go from here? He's got the Ancestral and the Vamp. He probably keeps his options open because he has that Spell Pierce.
Yep, he passed
into the Bazaar. He's got Unmask on the other side.
with 6 cards in his hands. So he's going to unmask. Pitching. Looks like he brought in the Dark Blast.
And that is out of there. Yeah, for the most part, if your opponent doesn't come right out with the Ixalan Jailer, that's a pretty safe play, especially if you have other dredgers. I see a Narcomoeba. We'll see. Hopefully he has some dredgers there.
So, what card did Borg?
Probably an Underground Sea. I can't quite see it. There it is. It is an Underground.
Underground Sea.
It would make sense with both the Ancestral. And now this could have been a blowout. Having seen Mental Misstep earlier, that was a fairly dangerous play, but it worked out.
So now he gets to Vamp and Ancestral.
And he's
the Ancestral's first.
Well, we've got the Bazaar, and he's trying to hit a misstep here.
Priority here.
I think he's just digging for a misstep. We've got discard, and there it is.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's devastating.
So
Trigon. Trigon does very little in this matchup. We've got a Vamp stranded in his hand. It's very possible that that card's going to go away to an Unmask or a Cabal Therapy. This game could take a huge swing. Borg went from having a very strong hand to having very few options here.
It seems like he probably could have Vamped first and then Ancestraled in response to the Mental Misstep. And maybe that would have given him some more outs.
That could have been a stronger line. Also, that Spell Pierce on the first turn, he could have Ancestraled before Barry had a chance to find the misstep in response to that on Mask, for example.
It looks like he ripped Snapcaster Mage.
That is very welcome here.
Yeah.
That's the line I try and take with my Grixis list, is get Ancestral into the bin and try and flash it back as soon as possible.
I'm surprised that he Ancestrals before he vamps here, because it seems like he would want to search for a piece of graveyard hate.
I think he doesn't feel the pressure. He does have a lot of counters. He actually found his Yixla Jailer, so he doesn't need to vamp for that now. Vamp can find a card like Time Walk, if necessary, and really out-tempo the game, or even a Strip Mine or Wasteland if he wants it.
It's possible that he just knew that his sideboard density would pay off with just drawing 3 cards.
That's where I like to be with the Dredge Hate. I try and have 7 or 8 cards, so if I do have a strong opener with something like Ancestral, I don't have to throw it away just because I have no ways to interact with the Dredge deck. That's one reason I'm not very big on Leyline of the Void, is you can't draw into it and expect to win the game.
So Barry does not have any dredgers in his graveyard right now.
Yeah, so that Dark Blast would have been possibly more valuable just to kick things off. And we've got the foil from the Vault Strip Mine.
Very nice.
Taking out the Bazaar. And the Jailer.
Yep, Barry's in jail.
Very, very difficult spot here. He's going to have to answer the Jailer in order to be able to do anything. Deathrite is going to be able to whittle away at the graveyard. And he's facing down 7 damage a turn. 8 if he's removing instants or sorceries with the Deathrite. So, very grim.
2-turn clock. Can Barry turn it around?
Borg is sitting on a Spell Pierce. He still has that Vamp.
Well, another Bazaar. If he was going to turn it around, that would be the way to start.
Now, with 1 card in hand, he's going to have to draw for turn and then try and select down to that 1 good card, but it's going to get Spell Pierced unless it happens to be a creature that can remove Yixla Jailer, and I don't believe he's running anything like that.
Oh, and he cast Leyline of the Void with Spell Pierce mana open.
That is going to do it.
Yep.
Yeah, there's no combination of cards that he could possibly have there. Packing it in to save time, definitely the right play.
One thing you don't want to have to worry about is having outs in Game 3 and not having enough time to play to them.
Absolutely. If there was a lot more time off the clock, the Dredge player could potentially want to get to the point where he'd have a window of time in order to win, but the bug deck being slower wouldn't be able to. But we're so far away from the 50-minute mark that it's not even a consideration. The most you're going to gain is a couple of minutes, and more than likely you're just going to show your opponent some more information.
Right.
Now he's able to adjust for the sideboard hate that he saw. That Leyline of the Void may not have been the right thing to put in there. That could have been a real blowout Game 3 if Barry hedged against the idea that his opponent had Leyline, having not seen it for 2 games.
Right.
That could have been really devastating. But he's probably going to leave in Chain of Vapor no matter what. It's just a question of those Nature's Claims. Do they really make the cut if you're seeing stuff like Yixla Jailer and a bunch of counters?
Well, one thing I noticed about Barry's sideboard as well is he doesn't play any removal that's specific to artifacts or enchantments. And I see a lot of people play either Ancient Grudge or, Ray of Revelation?
Yes.
Or Wispmare.
Yep. Well, you will note he does have the 3 Ingot Chewers for the artifacts.
Oh, that's true, yes.
But he's not heavy in the enchantment removal. And a lot of that has to do with the lack of popularity of Leyline and Rest in Peace. Rest in Peace is barely a card in Vintage, which is amazing because it is an just hugely powerful effect. But you don't really have Tarmogoyf running around as much as Legacy, so
Right.
the splash damage isn't as significant.
And the fact that Leyline comes down on turn 0 just makes it that much more effective.
And the decks that would like to run Rest in Peace typically would get hurt by it anyways. Like an Esper Bomberman list might really like that effect,
Right.
but then you're losing your ability to combo off. We've got the opening of Bazaar, but we've got the strip mine for it. Now, this is interesting. It's always, for the most part, the right play to get that Bazaar off the table as quickly as possible, but it still leaves the dredge player in a superior position. They're not as far ahead as they would be, but unless you've got Moxes or Lotus to follow up with your strip mine, they've advanced their game plan, and you really haven't done anything to advance yours.
It's an interesting point because when the dredge player gets cards in their graveyard, it's similar to a normal deck just drawing cards to their hand.
Yeah, this is like 4 cards. I mean, he's got the Bridge from Below, another Dredger.
Icarid.
You know, it's really telling when the dredge player just follows up with a second Bazaar. It feels like you haven't done anything.
Oh, City of Brass. That's one of my favorite versions of City of Brass, the JSS foil.
It's really nice.
The original picture with the old school foiling process.
I'm a big fan of the old promos. I don't keep them for myself, but I do deal with them quite a bit. Especially the old Wasteland. A lot of interest in that right now. That card is amazing in Vintage and Legacy right now. We've got the Chain of Vapor revealed. We've got a Bloodghast, which will be able to come back off of the next land trigger.
I believe his next land is also going to be an Undiscovered Paradise, so we're going to see a lot of Bloodghast this game.
Yeah, it really lets you use him for your Cabal therapies and your Dread returns effectively when you know you're going to be getting them back every turn.
And is Golgari Thug, is he a 3 mana to cast?
No, Thug's only 2.
He's 2? Oh, so he's actually coming down this turn.
Yeah, like I was saying before, Barry's really good at knowing when to change gears. There are times where you just have to start casting your guys and trying to beat down. And sometimes by doing that, you'll give yourself enough time to go back in the other direction.
And so Thug says when he dies, you can put a card from your graveyard on top of your library.
Yeah, that's really good with Narcomoebas typically, because then you'll be able to dredge and then get that Narcomoeba right back into the battlefield.
Right. Or in this case, if you really need that Bazaar Baghdad, he could put it on top. Looks like he drew a Narcomoeba.
I mean, it's not the worst thing in the world in terms of being able to beat down through the air. There's not going to be a lot Board can do about those guys.
Right.
But we'll see what he's able to come up with. It looks like he's got a Dark Blast for the Jailer, and Borg being tapped out, this would be the time. It looks like it's going to be met with a misstep in all likelihood.
Oh, I'm going to run out the Narcomoeba instead.
All right. I think he just senses that the play here is to wait until that Dark Blast is definitely going to resolve. He's not really afraid of the Jailer as a clock.
No,
he's just going to outrace
more
it.
Damage, yeah. Absolutely.
Borg fetching isn't going to have any mana issues this game, so we'll see what he's able to do with the cards he draws.
I noticed he had a Snapcaster in his hand as well, so he can misstep twice.
Well, he's got the Yixla Jailer right now, so.
Oh, right. Yeah, that affects his side of the table as well.
All right. Let's see what he's able to come up with here. Tapping out for Trigon. It's a blocker.
He is a big body, relatively speaking.
A little larger backside will allow him to sit back if necessary. I mean, at this point, he's really created a bit of a stall. I just don't see that as a profitable play here. Barry must really be expecting to explode at some point here and get through those final points of damage.
Well, drawing another Bazaar Baghdad would definitely be a start.
Yeah, that play makes a lot more. Oh, the Wasteland for it immediately, giving him no room to breathe here. You know, if he had a few turns to activate that Bazaar and kind of sculpt the hand, even though he's going down in the total number of cards, you know, he'd have a much better chance of getting rid of that Jailer. But as it is, it's just going to be so tough.
Right.
keeping back that Trigon. It can block either of those creatures. Yeah, this is going to be a tough one. Barry finds himself in a bad spot here. And he's just got to run it out. Unfortunately, Borg's got a ton of mana open. He doesn't even have to pay the 2 life. We've got a Bazaar activation in response, hoping to find that other misstep to fight over. Does not look like we're going to have it.
Found another Bazaar, though.
Yeah, that's something. Loses the Dakmor salvage.
I'm surprised Borg allows him to get another activation out of that Bazaar.
Yeah, that is questionable. I think there's a couple of lines there. I think you get rid of the Bazaar, or you decide that you want to cripple his mana and get rid of the City of Brass, but I don't see a lot of value in keeping that around. He might be mistakenly thinking about Snapcaster Mage here.
Oh, right. Oh, he did draw another Dark Blast, so that's pretty relevant.
Snapcaster.
Snapcaster, and is that going to be allowed? I guess, yeah. Pretty easy thing to miss. That's a shame. No judge call or anything.
I mean, I could be mistaken on that. I'm actually not 100% sure how the layers work on that. I was under the impression that you wouldn't be flashing anything back.
Yeah, that's... Flashback, is that an alternative casting cost and not an ability? Cards in graveyards lose all abilities?
I am not sure. That is an interesting question. We will have to catch that. Anybody who wants to make a comment about that, both Bazaars are out of the way. Go ahead and leave that in the comments. That is very, very relevant to this matchup. At this point, Borg is very far ahead.
Right, he has the graveyard hate and a significant clock on the table representing, what is that, potential 8 damage a turn. So even if he just leaves back the Ixalan Jailer, that's 6 damage.
Yeah, this is very far out of hand at this point.
But then if Barry blocks with his Golgari Thug at any point, when it dies, he could put that Dark Blast back on top. One turn, since he is playing the Flamekin version, one turn could be enough to combo out.
It's true. It's true. Another Wasteland, and that's going to make it difficult. He has another Bazaar sitting in his hand. That is all the Bazaars.
Looks like Borg's going to play it safe and just get in through the air.
Yeah, Jailer is doing a lot of work here. Yeah, the ability for Trigon to block in this matchup proved to be pretty valuable, and getting through the air is really been useful as well. So I was a little skeptical of leaving those in, but with the bug deck, you definitely have to be able to keep your clock. You can't just start removing your utility creatures to the point where you just can't close out a game once you're ahead.
Right. Oh, he played the end step Snapcaster and doesn't swing in. He could have, with only one blocker, he totally could have swang out just now.
Yeah, he might have thought better about the potential for the blowout Dark Blast. If one of those creatures gets removed during combat and he blocks another one, that could give him that one turn to do something.
Right.
So there we go. Borg taking it down on the back of some very strong Ixalan Jailer action.
Right. Well, that was round 1. Thanks for watching, and we'll meet you back for round 2.